Daniel Ricciardo's time with Red Bull Racing Team is now over, and even though we pretty much knew this would happen after how he performed in 2024, there are still lots of feelings we need to deal with, knowing that we won't see the driver who won 8 races in the racing area with Red Bull anymore. What makes us feel a little hopeful is that Ricciardo hasn't said he's quitting racing yet, and there are some cool choices for him. If he wants to stay in Formula One racing, and in this video, we're going to look at all the things that could happen to Ricciardo after being kicked out of Racing Bulls. It's obvious that Ricciardo is one of the amazing drivers still alive in the sport, even though the last few years didn't go the way he wanted. He has 8 race wins during a time when Mercedes was beating everyone else on the track, with only one of those wins happening in 2021 when Hamilton and Verstappen were fighting really hard. 32 times he finished on the podium, and he earned one. 329 points with his name on them. Clearly, these are some big accomplishments to match when it comes to having a good driver on the team, but that's all in the past. Now, as Red Bull currently has Verstappen, the guy who is really the reason why Ricciardo's story turned out this way after he left Red Bull in 2018, what is now the bigger question is, where will Ricciardo go, and whether or not we'll still see him dressed up in a Formula One suit starting in 2025. In a sweet post on Instagram, Ricciardo said lots of nice things about the sport, but like I said earlier in the video, not one word about quitting or giving up was mentioned. As the Australian driver said, "I've loved this sport my whole life. It's crazy and amazing and has been quite a trip to the teams and people that have been part of it. Thank you to the fans who love the sport sometimes. More than me, thank you. It will always have good times and bad times, but it's been fun, and honestly, I wouldn't change it until the next adventure." Of course, the next adventure is what keeps hope alive, and right now the most realistic choice for Ricciardo is to be Red Bull's ambassador, kind of like how Hamilton wanted to be with Mercedes when his contract was about to end. But the 7-time world champion reportedly wanted too much money, but Helmut Marko thinks there might be a way for both sides to agree and do this job in the near future. Ricciardo is a huge asset, who is really liked from the marketing and business side, which was one of the main reasons why companies like Visa and Cash App decided to join the sport the way they did, being main sponsors of Racing Bulls and a big part of their rebuilding. On top of that, Ricciardo has lots of fans in the USA, which is a place that Red Bull is now slowly but surely getting into with their working friendship with Ford. Of course, the growing audience from America would find it much easier picking Red Bull as their favorite team if Ricciardo kept doing the good guy role for the Austrian team, even though the way they said goodbye to him made some Formula One fans raise their eyebrows, because there wasn't even a proper announcement that Singapore would be his last race with the team when talking about Ricciardo being an ambassador for Red Bull. Marko said Ricciardo is one of the most popular Formula One drivers, especially in the USA. He wants to have time to think about his whole future. Will he try another racing category? I don't think so. And on the other hand, if he no longer drives actively, does he even want these PR activities? Marko was probably one of the main people who wanted Ricciardo replaced with Lawson, but that's all in the past now, because he was also the scout that picked him up back in the day and moved him up to Red Bull next to Vettel, where he managed to score more points than the 4-time world champion in their first and last season together. While many people think that Vettel performed badly on purpose to activate a special part in his contract so he could leave Ferrari, the results are what they are, and the question that we need an answer to sooner rather than later is whether or not Ricciardo has a future in the sport as a full-time Formula One driver. The only seat available right now is Sauber, and of course, Ricciardo was not on their shortlist, even though the team knew that his future with Racing Bulls was shaky like a leaf in fall. But this might change very quickly, because knowing Red Bull and how they work, nothing is certain with them until it's officially confirmed. So now that confirmation came that Ricciardo won't be part of the team, Sauber might have to update their list of people they're considering as to who would be ready to sit next to Hülkenberg starting in 2025. Right now, that list was narrowed down to 3 drivers only: Bottas, Bortoleto, and Colapinto. And knowing that there are 2 young and upcoming drivers on it, you would think that Sauber would want to go in a different direction than what Ricciardo offers. But with Bottas there, and with reports that he's the front runner to get that seat right Now, there is a question that Sauber would have to answer for themselves: who is the better driver when it comes to experience and when it comes to being competitive? It's true that Ricciardo's career has gone downhill ever since he left Red Bull, but he has won races in a car that wasn't competitive, or at least not the most dominant one on the track. And while the McLaren performance in 2022, as well as the Racing Bull's time in 2024 when he was beaten by Tsunoda, have put a dark cloud over his career, it doesn't mean we won't see another competitive version of him if given the right chance. Tsunoda said it himself: Ricciardo is really good when it comes to giving proper feedback about the car, even when the practice session is messy, which is exactly what Audi will need now that they're entering the sport with their own engine and car frame starting in 2026. Not to take any credit from Bottas, but if Sauber were to go in the direction of experience rather than youth, then the Finnish driver has just gotten a very serious competitor for the seat, in our opinion. Another choice is to try another racing series, which Ricciardo has more or less said no to having a strong desire for, because he's been born and raised to breathe Formula One air and nothing else, of course. And there are drivers who have raced in NASCAR after their Formula One years, such as Raikkonen and Button, as well as Juan Pablo Montoya, who managed to win 2 Cup races in this series and 255 starts. But Ricciardo himself has said it best when he was out of a McLaren seat at the end of 2022: it's either Formula One or nothing else. So thinking that we'll see him in any other car other than Formula One is probably a far-fetched idea. A realistic choice is to stay in Red Bull's group and see how the whole situation with Perez, Lawson, Verstappen, and Tsunoda will play out. There are lots of situations that need to be fixed here, and right now it's not easy to predict who will end up where, but with Aston Martin building a huge project starting in 2026, Verstappen could be out of Red Bull and Perez may not be the best person to either lead the team or be the second driver next to whoever takes the Dutchman's place. But this is also a choice that the 8-time race winner has more or less said no to, because he doesn't feel like he's ready for such a mission in his life. Right now he feels like he needs some time, and maybe retirement is what's most likely to happen with Ricciardo's life after not being able to finish the season in a proper way. Still, we will miss his driving. We will miss the famous Monaco celebration after his win in 2018. And we will miss his charming smile, but let's hope that Ricciardo won't put an end to his Formula One career just yet. With all this in mind, where do you think Ricciardo will end up in 2025? And more importantly, how do you feel that we won't see him in a Red Bull suit anymore? Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, have a look at the video that's appearing on your screen right now.